Yes, sir. We are live, hour 2. This is Road Gang Radio. We're hanging out with Jimmy Mack, Brad Bentley, and now the Robert to the Braswell.
Oh man, I got to tell you, it's one of my favorite segments. And not because. And by the way, it's one of my not because I take a walk when he does it. I'm actually listening intensely. I want to make this really clear. Robert isn't a breather. Robert is must-listen radio. Robert Braswell is the executive director of ATA's Technology and Maintenance Council, and he has been doing this. We are closing in on 1,000 episodes of Tech Talk with TMC. Absolutely thrilled to have him back here. Brad Bentley, of course, of Fastport. The reason we have this studio joins us this morning. Fastport is solving America's toughest recruiting and workforce challenges. They do it with research, technology, and people. From registered apprenticeships to veteran readiness, you can learn more at fastport.com or nationalapprenticeship.org. Robert, good morning. It's great to have you, my friend. How you doing?
The Braz!
Doing great. Thanks for having me again, Jimmy Mack. Hey there, Dre, back in there in the studios. This week we are doing something a little bit different. As you kind of mentioned in the teaser, we're going to be talking with me about the value of recommended practices. It's something we do every once in a while here on Tech Talk with TMC because I think it's important to kind of understand why it is we talk about recommended practices all the time on this program. But before we get started, Jimmy Mack, let's talk a little bit about the special offer we have this week. And this week it's our preventive maintenance inspection manual for technicians. We're offering it for the special price of just $25 plus shipping and handling. To order today, you can call us toll-free at 1-866-821-3468. Just mention radionemo.com. Get it for that special price. Also, we would love to have you as a member of the Technology and Maintenance Council. If you're an owner-operator or a small fleet, 100 or fewer power units, you can join TMC for the discounted annual dues of just $150. Do that, you're going to get our 2-volume recommended practices manual. That's the book we've been talking about for the next 30 minutes, and a lot of other great benefits too. So just please call that same toll-free number if you're interested in joining us today. And at the top of the program, we always remind our listeners that any recommended practices we discuss reflect the consensus of our members. We offer them as recommendations only, and everyone must first determine for themselves if they are safe and appropriate for their operation. Please remember that TMC doesn't endorse any product, person, or service, and the opinions expressed on the show are those of the individual and not necessarily the opinion of his or her company, nor TMC unless stated otherwise. And with all that out of the way, Jimmy, let's get started on today's topic, the value of recommended practices.
Well, first of all, and this sets up recommended practices. What you've done over the course of the many years that you've been doing this with us is building a mosaic, that each one of these things is an individual episode that addresses specific problems and specific issues and technologies that are coming and how we can deal with them and how we can actually make our lives better, whether we run a company or whether we run a truck. There is an overall thing that is developing here. That mosaic is recommended practices, the value of those practices, and that's why that whole disclaimer at the beginning is about the value to your company, because the total picture is what's important. The bits and pieces, you can remove one or two or make different choices and still get the overall picture, correct? I mean, at the end of the day, I know this is going to sound crazy, but can you define the very term recommended practices? Because I think it's a heck of a place to start.
Well, sure, and you're exactly right about why we use the term recommended practices. Some folks use the term best practice. We don't claim to have best practices. We say right up front when we talk about our disclaimer, we cannot possibly know, conceive, or imagine the best way to do anything in the trucking industry. But we have, based on consensus, a really good idea of what some of the recommended ways of doing things are when it comes to specifying, maintaining, repairing, or testing for commercial vehicle maintenance technology. But we don't know the best way, because probably the person that knows the best way is the person who's in the particular operation that you are in yourself. Nobody knows their operation better than themselves. And so that's what we're based on. When we were started in 1956, that's the foundational mantra that we started the predecessor organization of this council. Back then it was called the Maintenance Committee of the Regular Common Carrier Conference. And when we started all of this and published our first recommended practice in 1975, we did so with this in mind, so that all trucking may share equally in the general level of information that's been developed by this council, and in order to produce safer and more economically viable vehicles being placed into service. And so that's kind of our mission. It's the improvement of equipment, it's maintenance and maintenance management. And a recommended practice is basically a guideline for which we've developed as a consensus document, which indicates a recommended way of either repairing, specifying, maintaining, or testing any particular aspect of commercial vehicle maintenance and engineering technology.
Let me follow that up as well too. Let's go back to the origin of this point, the mid '50s as well too, because there is the growing awareness that the profitability of trucking depends not only on the quality of service and the quality of maintenance that you provide yourself, but that other people that you are competing with, that it actually behooves the entire industry for your competitors to actually engage in practices that might be recommended. We'll keep using that term. That it actually increases everybody's profitability and lets it get decided by the best among the best rather than somebody doing the right thing and everybody else becoming a menace on the highway, correct?
Yeah, that's generally true. I think the main reason why we would develop recommended practice just in general, not just for TMC, but for any industry, it's to improve market transactions, right, and to improve safety and generally the better operation of an outfit's methodology, right? That's what it's really all about. You're doing better, and then you're facilitating the market transactions that go around that. So that's an important thing. When TMC was started, we kind of set aside the economic issues in terms of competitiveness. In terms of marketing, that's a different story. In terms of safety, it gets a little competitive sometimes. What are you doing better or not? There's a lot of aspects where companies like to compete against each other, and they hold their cards close to the vest. When it comes to maintenance and specifications, our industry decided that it's not worth holding those competitive advantages necessarily close to your chest, so to speak, but let's share it for the benefit of everybody. So I think that's a real big distinction when it comes to maintenance and repair, as opposed to maybe some of the other aspects of trucking, like how do you do the best route, route optimization. That might be a competitive advantage. You don't want to share your
right.
best ideas on that one, right? But when it comes to how do you fix brakes, everybody has a vested interest in how do you fix brakes.
Yeah, and because when brakes fail, and when a competitor's brakes fail and the competitor's accident causes a disaster, everybody's insurance rates go up. I mean, that's one of the most basic ways to think about it. The perception of trucking in the marketplace, the perception of the public of trucking in the marketplace. Dave loves to say it. They don't see like this company or that company screwed up. They see truck screwed up. So it really does behoove. It's one of the things, it's one of the great values of recommended practices is that if everybody is following some sort of recommended practice or another and sharing best recommended practices, I'll stay on that, and sharing those recommended practices, there is a better opportunity to create a marketplace in which everyone can compete and then use their proprietary close to the vest stuff to see if they can get a competitive edge. So I kind of want you to, give us an overview, a 30,000-foot overview of, what the value is, and then we'll get to some specifics here.
Well, I think one other thing to add on your last point is that, no person is an island apart from its own. Everybody is all connected in this world, and we all have families. You all want them to be safe when you're going down the road. So at that very fundamental level, this is important stuff. So I just think that's important to get out there. Now, in terms of, what is the recommended practices all about? Why do we do this and so forth? Recommended practices cover just about everything you can think of when it comes to the onboard technology of the truck. We go from electrical to tire and wheels to trailers to total vehicle electronics to light medium duty vehicles even. We go not just in class 7 and 8, we also go all the way down to pickup trucks in class 2 through 6, some of the mid duty stuff. It gets grown over the years. When we first started in 1956, there was about 4 or 5 study groups, and we've put our first recommended practices manual out there in 1975. It took us about 20 years to gather all that information into one source. We had about 8 study groups. And again, it's grown and grown. Sometimes study groups get combined with others. Sometimes they go away. Sometimes we create new ones because we're always trying to be mindful of what the industry needs, and we're very adaptive to those needs.
It's interesting too because trucking is one of, and I'm using the term, by the way, guys, as a business practice and not as an ideology here. Trucking is conservative with a lowercase c. But that being said, given the breadth and scope of the institution, like I said, you're talking about 15, 16, maybe even 20 different industries kind of contained in there. people say, well, change comes so slowly. It actually comes slowly in regards to the public perception of that change. But what you guys are doing over at the council is you're always having conversations, because even in what you guys do, incrementalism, each one of those incremental changes has a massive impact, a domino effect. I don't know if I'm making sense with this, Robert, but I there's a sense of, I want people to understand that the ideas are always being talked about. Implementation is a different thing, because a consensus has to be reached to some degree before everybody kind of goes running off to do the same thing. Do you get where I'm coming from, or am I just talking babble?
Well, let's take two of your points. First of all, you mentioned trucking is conservative from a business perspective. That may be true, but I would say from a business perspective, not a political one, the fleets and the people that work within TMC are very progressive, and they tend to be on the far bell curve of folks that really want to try adaptive things, new things to improve maintenance as technology and maintenance management. So that's an important thing to get started. Again, not political, but basically, in terms of being progressive, forward-thinking, future-thinking, I think we have the cream of the crop when it comes to the folks in the industry that actually work on stuff. So that's very important. Number two, you're right. Things do take a long time to go from point A to point B. We've said this on the program before. It usually takes about 35 years for a new technology to get implemented into the industry to the point that it becomes ubiquitous or, universal. Take a look at automated manual transmissions. Those things were around 30 years ago, but it wasn't only till recently that they were, almost universally spec'd on all new builds. It takes time because you have early adopters. They try it out. They take the knocks. They learn the problems with the maintenance of them when they first get started. They're not as easy to do, let's say, as the older technology. There's resistance to folks who are actually the users of the technology. And after a while, you get through those bumps. You get to the second generation of a particular technology. It gets a little better. And then after a while, everybody starts seeing the economic benefit and the operational benefit of a particular design or specification, and it becomes widely adopted. So that is true. It does take a long time, and it's probably good because you don't want necessarily a technology just to go 100%. Classic example of this was analog braking systems back in the 1970s. It was analog. There were no computers. It was not ready for prime time, but the government mandated the industry to use this technology, and trucks are going down the road that didn't stop. And so that was a problem, and there were lawsuits, and we stopped that, and we got that technology off the road. And when it came back in its better form as digital analog braking systems, then it was being able to be adopted by the industry. And even then, it took about 20 years to go from that point to when it was mandated by the government in the late 1990s. And now it's even gotten better and better, and there's other assisted technologies that go along with that, such as, rollover stability control, emergency and automatic braking, things like that, ADAS. But it takes a while. So you're correct.
It's interesting. One of the people on YouTube just commented, said, so you guys are progressive in terms of impulse and conservative in regards to implementation. I kind of like that. That's kind of it, isn't it? The idea that the impulse is to always innovate, always be forward thinking, always be moving, but then to make sure that all the ducks are in a row and the safety aspect is taken care of before things launch. It seems to be that's the thing, right?
That's a great observation. That's the kind of a person we'd love to have on some of these task forces we have at TMC working on recommended practices, because this person gets it. That's exactly right. We're always we're very open-minded when it comes to how we're going to innovate, because we know there are issues. And, it starts before the recommended practice. We've got a pre-recommended practice organization called our Future Truck Program. And what that does is it looks for problems long-term, 15, 20, 30 years down the road. What are the things that drivers and maintenance operations and trucking companies are going to need from their equipment 15, 20, 25 years down the road? We don't know how to do it. We admit right up front, we have no clue, but we're going to tell you what the expectation is. So we'll say, the mission is we want a tire to operate without air. Hey, we don't know how to do that. Why do we want to do that? Because we don't want to necessarily maintain the air inflation pressure. So if you can come up with a tire that meets all the operational demands, that does not require pneumatic pressure, does not require inflation pressure, we are all about that. You guys go figure it out. And then at that point, once we put those needs assessments out there, then we start thinking about recommended practices of how you actually accomplish that. So that's kind of an extreme Example: there are airless tires out there on the off-road and passenger side. Limited usage, of course, at this point. They're not quite ready for prime time. Definitely not ready for prime time on the over-the-road trucking side, but we anticipate that's probably going to be the case one day. And that's sort of the example of the progressive side of recommended practice development versus the conservative implementation.
I'm going to say this too. Part of what you guys must talk about a lot too is when you have technology that you already know can do the thing, you've also got to examine what I call the law of unintended consequences. You talk about the idea of being forward thinking, the idea that we can do this thing. We don't know what it's going to do, what the I guess the side effects, whether positive or negative. So that's one of the things you guys have to kind of do in these conversations as well, is not just figure out whether we can do the thing, but whether doing the thing sets off a ripple effect that changes everything, and making sure people are ready for those changes when they come in, whether it's a disruption in who you employ or the quality and skills of the drivers or the people that you're going to be employing on a regular basis. You've got to think about the human impact and the impact of the overall highway and supply chain for any new technology that you guys are talking about. The idea, because remember, those tires, you might make them, somebody's got to make them. Are there enough people to make them, and can they be made at a mass number, or are they prohibitively expensive? All those things have to be considered when you guys are thinking about what's next. It's not just the thing itself, but all the impact the thing has on everything else, correct?
Yeah, that's a good point. I can give you some examples of unintended consequences that were the result of technological developments that TMC had something to do with. So aerodynamic devices were almost non-existent in the 1980s, right? But everybody was interested in saving fuel. We were just coming out of the second fuel crisis. Aerodynamic devices were all of a sudden, a novel adaptation everybody wanted to do because everybody wants to save fuel. The problem was having aerodynamic improvements caused some unintended consequences. And some of that, for example, was with brakes. The brakes on the vehicle equipped with aerodynamic devices had to absorb more energy than the brakes on non-aerodynamic devices. The rolling resistance was basically reduced because you're going through the air better, and this resulted in more brake applications for the same amount of brake retardation. You had higher brake operating temperatures, and if the aerodynamic devices used on these vehicles also reduced airflow around the brakes, we found that started to shorten brake life. So now we have to start addressing those issues. Hey, we're cutting through the air better, we're saving fuel, the brakes are wearing out more fast. Now we got to either pay more attention to the maintenance or change our specifications to reduce the unintended consequence. So that's a really good point.
And by the way, another person jumped into the chat, and they kind of wanted to know: is there an example of new technology being developed? Because I think I understand this. What you're saying here. So let's say that we talk about the idea of the aerodynamic. Have we seen improvements in other technologies because another technology showed up? Meaning, did the brake improvements follow quickly, or did that take time?
I think it takes a little bit of time for first people to, let's use this example, aerodynamic devices. It takes a little bit of time to start using the aerodynamic devices to start seeing the fact that it's having an impact on the brakes. It also had an impact on the drivetrains because you had increased transmission temperatures because of impeding airflow into the vehicle for that, and that led to reduced gear, synchronizer, bearing, seal life, and in some cases as much as half service life. So it takes a little time to find those issues. But once you start doing that, then, you get right on it. You try to find ways of improving the design, maybe redirecting airflow, maybe changing some of the specifications you have on the foundation brake to adapt to the aerodynamics. Maybe you want to go to disc brakes, for example, because they're going to do a better job of stopping, maybe dissipating heat. So in that case, yes, you do see the one technology will lead to an improvement in the other technology, if that's what the question is.
By the way, I got the word. That's what I was asking. Yes, I wanted to ask about the return on investment as well too, because I have talked to some of our partners and some of our sponsors over the years who will tell me, "Oh, we have that technology. We don't have the public-private partnership to make that possible, and there's no return on investment on that. That the money you'll spend the rest of your life trying to pay off how much that technology costs right now." So does part of when you guys have these conversations, does return on investment actually play any part? The idea is, this is great, it totally works, and it's so flippin' expensive that nobody's going to buy it yet. Does that ever play a part in when you guys are kind of figuring out recommended practices?
Not only does it play a part, I'd say by and large, most of the fleet members, equipment user members in the council are even more aggressive when it comes to ROI. You really got to have your ducks in a row with the new technology to make sure it's going to work for my operation, because I just don't have the margins in my operation to spend money on stuff I don't need or is not going to pay its own weight, so to speak. And in doing so, we actually have some recommended practices that they're themselves ROI calculators. A good example of this, we have a fuel savings calculator for aerodynamic devices. You want to figure out whether an aerodynamic device is going to work for your operation. We've got a recommended practice. It's basically an Excel spreadsheet with all sorts of matrices and things like that, calculations in it. You plug your data into it, and it's going to give you an idea of what it's going to cost you, how much it's going to save you, and what the ultimate return on your investment is going to be over a certain period of time and/or mileage. You have to know some of your own data, right? You've got to know there's a whole list of data points, data elements we call them, that you have to know about your operation, such as a lot of this is very easy, so it's not that complicated, but, average mileage per year, your current fuel efficiency, average cost of your fuel, percentage of owner-operators in your fleet, number of trucks in your fleet, number of trailers in your fleet, and then some other things about the specifications that you have on your particular vehicle. But you plug those things in, and you're going to get a little a diagram that's going to either be in the red or the green. It says this is going to make sense for you. Another thing, as an example, we do this with our Texcelerate Now program that we're in partnership with the feds. FMCSA, we have an ROI calculator for ADAS technology, and you can do the same basic thing with that. You go in there, you say, let's take a look at forward collision warning is going to make sense for my operation. I plug in a number of different variables, and I will get an idea, depending on how much depth of information I have, because we've got a simplified version and a more advanced version of that calculator. But it can give you a really good idea if that technology is going to be worth the money that you're putting into it. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It really depends on your operation, and that's why we say recommended practices, because we don't know the best thing for your particular operation. Only you know that, because you're the one that operates and is most intimately familiar with your operation.
Yeah, Jimmy Mack, I want to go back to the ROI that you were bringing up. I'm thinking back to when I was at TCA a few years ago. There was a study, I won't mention a company name, but there was a lot being done around truck seats at the time. And some great data came out of that. There was a lot of companies that beta tested and found that there was a way to reduce vibrations, things that were going to increase or be better for the health of the driver, but they couldn't get the price point down per unit to make it worth it for those same fleets who saw the value in it to actually invest. And it ended up, sadly, kind of dying on the vine, and that was unfortunate.
Yeah, that must be frustrating, Robert, when people when everything else is in place and people just simply can't get the price points down. I mean, and that must be something that you guys go over and over again in regards to everything else is in place, we just can't get the return on investment down. And from what you were saying earlier too, Robert, it sounds like we can make everybody Billy Bean, that the data, given your recommended practices and given the kind of resources you guys have available, there's no reason why even the smallest of companies can't turn themselves into the Billy Bean of the Oakland A's and play some real money ball with their trucking company, right?
Well, you use an example here. Let's talk about seats. So there was a seating technology a few years ago. I won't mention the name, but basically what it did was it used electromechanical systems to isolate the driver from the road using very advanced technology, so that when you're in this seat and you don't feel anything, it is just canceling out all of the different road inputs. Great technology. Problem is, very expensive. Hard for a lot of operations to justify that sort of expense. It works, but it doesn't necessarily make economic sense for a company that their operating ratio is, let's say, 100, 101, 98. You got an operation ratio of 98, you're making what, 2 cents on a dollar. That's pretty thin profit margin. So you got to keep that in mind. You have to balance those concerns. What makes the most sense for my operation, given the fact I still have to make a profit? This is not a charity.
By the way, that's the other great thing you can tell your employee. I can give you a really comfortable seat, but if I do, you ain't getting paid. I'll tell you that right now. Somebody's not getting some money out of this, by the way, and that's really an important thing.
Your comfort or cash?
Yeah,
what are you gonna pick?
Yeah, comfort or cash when it comes. That's the lifestyle thing that our good friend over at Bob Costello talks about. There's a point where lifestyle does have to take a back seat. pun intended, getting a chance to kind of make that money. It must be an agonizing decision, though. I can't imagine you guys must sit there and go over it and over it until you're like, it can't be done. Wish it could, right?
Sometimes you look at the data and you say, now, what's the best way to solve a particular problem? Let's say you have a problem with side impacts. What's the best way to solve that problem? Is it putting extra guards on the sides of the trailer or the vehicle, or is it maybe using ADAS technology that's going to prevent the impact to begin with, right? So, and do a lot of other things at the same time. So sometimes it's a matter of how you approach it.
By the way,
yeah, anyway, go ahead.
Go ahead. I mean, I thought this would happen. Not only is he a terrific host of his segment, he is a terrific guest on his own segment. The Braz has joined us. Robert Braswell has been here. You're not going to believe it, Robert. It's already 8:26, and I wanted to make sure that you got in all the information you always kind of put on at the end so that we could actually wrap up Tech Talk. Unbelievable. Masterful, by the way. Thank you, sir.
Oh, my pleasure. And let's take a look. I'm going to do a little bit of a forward look for the rest of the shows for the month of July. I think it might be worth for the listening audience. Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about air system maintenance, facts and falsehoods next week. That's going to be a great program. The week following, the 16th, we're going to talk about when to keep, trade, or sell a truck. We have a new recommended practice on that very topic. Going to really enjoy that conversation. We're going to be talking about the following week, the 23rd, on coolant and DEF maintenance. And then on the 30th, we're going to be talking about alternative powertrains, what's coming down the road. So that's kind of what the a little teaser there for what's coming up on Tech Talk with TMC for the month of July.
Robert Braswell has joined us for the longest-running segment. The longest-running segment in 50-plus years of Radio Nemo has been Tech Talk, and there's been one guy who has been behind the wheel from it from the beginning, Robert Braswell, the Executive Director of ATA's Technology and Maintenance Council. He has been discussing the value of recommended practices. Guys, this will be available in short order up on our platform on YouTube. Please check it out there. It is an invaluable conversation to help you understand what it is these folks do and why it is so important if, in fact, you want to onboard yourself into the business side of the trucking industry. Thank you, Robert. As always, happiest of Fourths to you, my friend.
You too, absolutely. And same thing to all over listening audience. Happy 4th of July.
TMC.trucking.org is the place you guys should go. We're going to get out of here.